Hello, bot builders. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time it is for you in the world where you are. I hope you are all having a lovely day, a lovely morning or afternoon. It is a nice, chilly, sunny one here in Montreal, which I always appreciate. It's been a while since we've done this, so if you're in the audience, if you're in the chat right now, and you feel like it, and you feel like sharing, why don't you go ahead and share like the flag of the country that you're in, as we let a few more people trickle in. I know that I started this a bit late today, so we can allow people to saunter in, as it were. I love to see all these flags come in. Oh, nice. An Aussie in Scotland. That's nice. That's fun times. If you while all of the country names and flags are kind of trickling in, I'll go ahead and introduce myself and walk you through what it is that we do on these streams. If you're new here, hello, my name is Robert. I host the Botpress Basics office hours once a week, every Tuesday at 3 p.m. For about 30-45 minutes. The purpose of these streams is for our new to Botpress or low code, no code enthusiasts. Of course, if you're a developer, you are more than welcome here. And if you're a seasoned Botpress veteran, you're equally welcome here as well. But the purpose of these is just to kind of brush up on your skills or give those of us who are new to Botpress maybe a sense of the basics or getting started on Botpress, maybe seeing some success. Maybe you just want to build along with somebody. Maybe you just want to ask some questions. As usual, what I say at the beginning of these streams is I always have kind of a lesson or a build planned, but the purpose of these streams is to be derailed. I want you to ask me your questions, let me know what it is that you're thinking, if you have any feature requests or whatnot, if you want to know if you can do something in Botpress, if you've got questions about how things work, please try to derail me because that is the purpose of us being here. So do not be shy or do not be kind of diffident to ask your questions. That is absolutely the purpose of why we're here live together. If you're watching the recording of this later on YouTube at some point, hey, welcome. How are you? Join us on our Discord server sometimes. We stream twice a week, once on Tuesdays, once on Thursdays. My co-host Patrick hosts a live stream geared towards developers. If you're interested on the development side, perhaps building an integration with a third-party service or doing some coding tasks, you might find that one equally exciting. But that is what's going on here. That is what the Botpress office hours are all about. I'm going to go ahead and I'll share my screen. We can hop into the studio and I'll talk about what I want to do on today's build. So let's go ahead and we'll share some stuff here. All right. So typically the way that I run these is I'll over the course of the previous week, I'll look at kinds of the questions that people are asking on Discord. Then maybe I'll put a build together that kind of showcases some of the things that people are wanting to do. And a couple of recurring themes over the last couple of days have been the query knowledge bases card, that very specific card over here in the studio. I know this is one that sometimes causes questions. You can find it over here in the agents menu in the card tray. So we'll go over using this. We'll talk about maybe some best practices for it. I'll talk about how to use it to your advantage as a bot builder, if that is something that you are interested in. So I know that was a question that came up a couple of times over in the help channel. It's been a couple of weeks since I've seen that. So maybe the time is ripe to go ahead and show off this card again. Welcome. Hello to South Africa. Hello from Canada. And then the other thing I would like to show for today is a pretty, what I would consider, like beyond sending messages and whatnot, kind of the bread and butter of a bot's functionality. So if you're new to Botpress and you're looking like, what is maybe one of the easiest things I can do to demonstrate value to my project or to my employer about, developing this bot and then deploying it to a website or a channel, is taking user inputs. Maybe these could be questions, maybe these could be like summaries of a conversation, and then saving them so you can analyze them later. We'll talk about this as time goes on after we begin building. But one of the key things is that these are processes that become scalable. So the idea here is like, yeah, if you've got 10 conversations, you can get some value out of that. But once you're talking like 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 conversations, can you perform maybe like large scale data analysis on that? Are those things that are interesting? What can you glean from this, particularly as a business scales? I know that for those of you who work on like the freelancer agency side of things and you're looking at talking to customers or potential users of the software about like, what is the business case for this? What do I get out of this? What do my clients get out of this? I think that saving that information and then performing data analysis on it later is kind of a big one. So that's the rough outline for today's, I don't want to say, I keep saying lesson, but that's the rough outline for today's stream. And then of course, please try to derail me as it were, because that is why we're here. Alrighty, hello Decay, Nico, Ayush. Hope you're all having a lovely, lovely day where you are, or evening, or morning. The magic of time zones, who can say? All right, let's hop into the studio. We're here. I'm going to go ahead and we'll just demonstrate maybe some functionality for the query knowledge base card. First, I'm going to show you how it works. I'll demonstrate for you its functionality, and then I'll give you maybe a more practical example of making the query knowledge base card work for you. So put simply, the query knowledge base card, I'll just rename this. I will rename this node query KB so that we can see what it does. Great. And of course, if we're querying a knowledge base, if we're asking a question, we're going to need a knowledge base to begin with. This has been kind of my go-to example recently. So whenever I am debugging or testing or building something from scratch, I'll start with a simple rich text knowledge base with just one sentence. A quick tip here, the reason that the sentence in front of you, perhaps I'll zoom in a bit. The reason the sentence in front of you reads "the tiger is blue" is because I want to make sure that I'm giving accurate information, and I want to make sure that my bot's not hallucinating. It's unlikely to find a blue tiger based on elsewhere on the internet or elsewhere in a knowledge base. Or based on its own knowledge. For example, if you're prompting ChatGPT for a question. So the idea here is like, you might want to put something that ChatGPT won't come up with on its own. This is unique to you, is the blue tiger. Is there truly anything like a coffee at 3 p.m? Nothing hits quite as hard. Okay, so query knowledge base card, there are a couple of things. I'm sure you're all familiar. I would assume that most of you are familiar with querying a knowledge base. Typically what we'll do is we'll give a raw input card here. We'll say something like, what is your question? And this will allow users to ask questions and receive a response. Great, bing, bang, boom, that's all done. But there will be times later on in your bot building journey, typically, this is maybe a bit of an advanced skill, where you want to maybe ask a question of your knowledge base based on a previous input, or you want to ask a question of your knowledge base and then withhold the answer, maybe don't send it right away. And so that's what the query KB card is for. So this won't automatically print an answer. This won't automatically send an answer to your user. Instead, it will withhold that answer. Equally, you'll see here in the query section, it is going to query the knowledge base based on a custom query. So for instance, you might say something like, well, for example, I'll just show you that this supports variables. So if I put event.preview in double curly braces, you can see here that what color is the tiger is the question that I asked, and that is what we'll be querying the knowledge base with. If you're wondering, Robert, what the heck is event.preview? That is just the Botpress variable for referencing the user's most recent message. Okay, so let's talk a bit about what's going to happen now. Event.preview will query the knowledge base based on the question that I asked. My knowledge agent, my bot, will store an answer, it'll save an answer, and then it's going to do nothing with that answer unless I tell it to. So a couple of things here. The first thing I'll do is maybe I'll save this, the answer to a variable called query KB answer, and then maybe I'll send it. So I'll use a text message card to just send that message, and that will be using a variable. Can I create a more complicated prompt than just event.preview? Yes, of course. So this is kind of like the dead simplest way, is using event.preview, so just what the user has sent previously. But for example, let's say your user was asking you about an animal and you were saving the value, the name of that animal to a variable called workflow.animal, you could say something like, what color is the at workflow.animal? Of course, this won't resolve because I don't have this variable created. But if you wanted to use custom prompts like this, you could do that here easily. So the whole purpose of the query KB card is that it supports variables in entry, which you can then refer to later. You can chain multiple variables together. Kind of the sky is the limit there. Of course, as your prompt gets more complicated, you run the risk of your bot being like, I don't know what you're talking about. But that's, of course, that's the beauty of prompt engineering. So for example, if I want to create a recommendation based on 5 different variables, yeah, I think the thing here to remember is that a recommendation and a question are not necessarily the same thing. So LLMs, models, are really good at providing answers to questions, but a recommendation is a question and it's also not a question. So I would say you might need to engineer the prompt in a certain way to get the information you're looking for, yeah. Based on, of course, how the information is laid out in your knowledge base, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different variables to using this many variables. But let us continue with our example. The last thing we need to set up before we go ahead and use the query KB card is that we've got to turn on a certain setting in the knowledge agent. Over here, we'll turn on answer manually. Why? Because otherwise, if we have any knowledge query cards like raw input cards or capture cards elsewhere in our flow, our bot will answer and then maybe save that message again. So we're going to go ahead and turn manual answering on, and we'll see what happens here. So what if I say something like, hi, and we see here the tiger is blue. Okay, let me ask that. Give me one more time. So I'm going to pop a wait for user input card here, and I want you to pay attention to what happens in the flow. So here I put a wait for user input card. We're waiting for user input, which means that my bot's not doing anything. It's waiting for me to say something, and I'll just say something like, what color is the tiger? Answer found in knowledge base, the tiger is blue. If I remove this text card, we'll get that answer from the knowledge base, but we're not going to send that message. So we'll just verify that that works by, we see nothing is printed here. We see answer found in knowledge base, but the conversation just ends because we're not sending the response. Okay, great. So that's how the query KB card works. And so now that we know how this works, now that we understand the functionality of it, let's talk about maybe a more practical example of how you would use this maybe in like a real life workflow, or if this was something you were building for a client to say, here's the value you can get out of this. Okay, so the first thing I would do if I was building this for a client or something is I would say, life's all about give and take. Life is all about providing a service, but then receiving something in return. And so perhaps the thing that you want to receive in return is you're building a mailing list. This is a new business that you're building a bot for. Perhaps this is your own personal project. And you want to build your own mailing list. And you only want to save the emails of people that are like pretty motivated, or you can assume that if somebody's gone through the trouble of talking to your chatbot or asking a question, that you're motivated in some way. So you don't want to save the email of everybody that visits your website, but maybe you want to just save the email of people who have asked a question and maybe have received a response to a question on your after talking to your bot. So a couple of different things here. You'll remember from the beginning, if you've been here since the beginning of this stream, one of the things that we talked about was saving information from a bot's conversation. So now the first example of this is that we're going to save that information somewhere. How do we save that information? How do we take information that our bot has collected? Maybe it's having hundreds of conversations a day, and we want to store them somewhere. Well, of course, the easiest way to do this is a table. Perhaps one of the maybe dark horse is the right word. It's certainly one of my favorite Botpress features because it takes the functionality of something like a Google Sheets, sort of like a very lightweight spreadsheet, and then allows your bot to interact with that in some way. Nico asks about when can we expect to see the Discord integration. I have no dates for you. I will never commit to a date. I will say that the Discord integration, like many, is one that we're currently working on, but we are also currently working on ways to make it easier for members of the community to build their own integrations and share them with others. So the idea here is like, we have integrations that we build out of the box, but there are much more of you than there are of us. And so the idea here is like if somebody in the community wanted to build a Discord integration, that would also be great. So stay tuned for that. Okay, I'm going to rename this table. I'll call it emails, and I won't add any other information. But I'll just include one column called email, and this is all the information I want. As somebody who markets for a living, there is a deep value in saving just the emails to a CSV, and then having that, a manipulatable list that I can work on in the future. Quick pro tip for the table users among us: you can hide these two tables. Created at and updated at are really useful for certain cases, but when you just want to glance at information, you can just right click and hide column. And now we've got this beautiful clean column of emails. Okay, we're still missing a couple of key pieces, but we are taking our time and we are working through how this works. So now remember, we're building this bot for a client, so it's got to, it's got to welcome the user. So maybe I'll just say something like, hello and welcome to our conversation. You can go ahead and ask me anything. A lovely conversation happening. It seems that the planning the customer journey in a bot is where the art is. Are there any best practices, for examples, for setting up a bot for a conference with 20 PDFs of a technical nature, along with information about the conference? Real intel, you ask a great question. You are right about the idea of mapping out this journey is the important part of building a bot. The function is equally important, but kind of the art or the design, we call this conversation design. When can your users allow certain ask certain questions, or when can they expect to receive responses? Best practices or examples. I don't have specific examples for a conference, but real intel, I will suggest the Botpress YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube at some point in the future, hello. But the Botpress YouTube channel has tons of examples of performing different tasks with Botpress. So you might find it instructive to look at a couple of those examples. You may very well get tired of looking at my face, but perhaps you can enjoy my various haircuts throughout the months. But you might find it instructive to go through some of those old examples, maybe old recordings of live streams where I do similar things, and then maybe take a look from there. I hope that is helpful. Pass USIA. How to do a survey or evaluation for a candidate and deliver its results connected with an API or Google Excel. So I'll answer this in chunks. You can make API calls using the execute code card. I'll show you where you can find that. So if you are developer adjacent, or if you're a developer and making API requests to an API is something that's familiar to you, the execute code card is what you're looking for. It's just a dead simple card that will execute a custom chunk of code, i.e. you can use this to make an API call or a request to an API. So you can use that there. Your specific question was about how to do a survey or evaluation for a candidate and deliver its results. There's a couple of different things I would recommend. The first is, it sounds like your best buddy will be single choice or multiple choice cards, allowing the user to pick. That said, Botpress chatbots are not necessarily designed for performing surveys or evaluations, so you might have to do a couple of funky workarounds based on the design of the conversation. But you also might find it useful to see the rest of what we're doing today, which is that we're saving the results of something to a table, which I suspect you might find useful. And Ducci says, I'd like to put private data in a KB that should not be available to the public. So I see there, I can think of a use case where a company, for example, wants to train the bot with internal data and only wants to give access to the chatbot to employees. The idea here is the bot is not accessible to anybody that you don't make it accessible to. So how do I guarantee that none of the logged in users simply take the embed and make the bot public? I would say that for cases like these, what we have found the most effective is allowing companies to deploy bots specifically to something like Slack or Microsoft Teams. So gated places where information is safe. For example, like the web chat is not a place I would recommend that companies provide private data to, because of course that's accessible on the web. However, if you are publishing this specifically to Slack or Microsoft Teams, then it's only available to members of that org. So I would say maybe using a third-party integration there is your best bet. What will be the better way to create a KB with 20 products, but with complicated descriptions, to make a PDF with explanations, or to make a table? I would start with a either a PDF or just a regular knowledge base, and then see. But the table is much more reliable in saying this specific thing is related to this specific thing. Why? Because the information is stored in rows, and so it's a lot less likely for your bot to get confused between one chunk and the next. That being said, if you format your knowledge base in such a way that is very clear which pieces of information go with which headings, for instance, so like if there's very clear information hierarchy, in theory, your bot shouldn't get confused. The LLM powering your queries shouldn't get confused. But of course, it's 2024, and I think we all are very familiar with AI hallucinations by now. I would like to embed the bot into a web app I have. How would I do that? Are there any plans for future so it can be done instead of only embedded in Slack or Teams? I would say the ability to embed a bot specifically in a web app or something like that is a part of the Botpress SDK, which is something that we're currently working to improve in the near future. But of course, I'm not going to commit to a date. But Ducci, you ask a great question. You're not the first person to ask this question. So the idea here is like, you want to take a bot, integrate it into something you have, maybe not a third-party service like Discord or Teams or Slack, but instead like something you've built on your own. That is part of the Botpress SDK, which we are currently, you will know when we've released the version of what you're looking for, is what I'll say. That is, it's not just you. My pleasure. Thanks for the questions. I love these questions. These are fantastic questions, everyone. All right. I see Carolyn is typing. Hello, Carolyn. How's it going? But I'm gonna go ahead and continue building while you type your message. Okay. So remember, what's happening here is we're saying hello and welcome to our conversation, and then we say you can go ahead and ask me anything. I'm gonna give my user the ability to actually, maybe what I'll do is I'll split this out into two messages because I find that usually works better. So in the capture card, I'll say, you can go ahead and ask me anything. And I'm going to turn off answer questions from KBs because I don't want to answer the question here. I want to use the query KB card to answer the question. So here I'm going to place event.preview. So the idea here is this is going to query the knowledge base with whatever the user has input here. But it's not going to send the answer, of course, because we have manual answering enabled. So there's no way the user will see the answer. Let's test this out. So I'll say, hi, what color is the tiger? And we see a great big nothing. Fantastic. So we don't see anything there. That's great. So let us continue. There's one thing I want to do first, which is that if you'll remember when I was first laying out the idea of placing the answer maybe behind like, you want to store the person's email before you give them the answer. Well, sometimes you don't always have the answer to a question. So first, we might say something like, I can't answer that because I don't have an answer to your question. Do you want to do something else? So we make sure that we're only storing the emails of people for whom we have answers to their questions. So I'll use an expression card for this. I'll call it no answer from KB, and I will use the simple condition for negating an answer from a knowledge base. What the heck did I just say? In other words, the expression card allows you to define the conditions for a transition, and the condition we've defined here is turn.knowledgeAgent.answer, i.e. did the knowledge agent find an answer to the question? And the exclamation mark is typical JavaScript, I think, for negating. So in other words, if there's no answer from a knowledge base, we'll send a simple text card that says, sorry, I don't have an answer. And we might do something else here. Maybe we'll pass it through to an AI task. Maybe we'll get GPT-4 to do it for us. Or maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we don't want to risk a, am I allowed to say Chevrolet incident? Carolyn says, even with a private channel integration, you can use a password or a username to gate a bot. There are a few tutorials on these. Here's an example of using a username. Yeah, so Carolyn has given you a great example there. So do follow that. But Ducci, you bring up another good point, which is that I have thought about that as well, but I don't want the user to enter username and password in the bot when they've already logged into the web app. So that's exactly the purpose of the Botpress SDK, the software development kit, is to allow you to integrate into things that are already behind a third-party login. That's a pretty common use case, is that businesses will say, I've got my information behind a third-party, like a login service, but I don't want to make my users authenticate every time they want to ask a question. And then past USIA says, for courses, I would like to have a chat that would allow initially evaluating the student's knowledge on a specific topic, which you recommend for a series of questions that are generated randomly, then deliver the result and thus be able to define a teaching program. I'm generating this test for my students from public schools in Chile. Oh, that sounds like a wonderful use case. But there's a lot of different steps that are going into here. So I think this is a case that is best suited for some trial and error. You can, of course, use the AI task to then generate some questions based on a certain knowledge base that you have. Lots of different steps here. Sorry to derail. No, not this. The point of these streams is to be derailed. I am here to answer your questions, of course. What's the best way to collect information and make sure that the user puts the information you asked for? Alligatus $4. I think the capture cards are they literally do this for you. So there's no best practice there. The best practice, I suppose, would just be to use the capture cards. And if the user doesn't provide the information you asked for, then there are two things. The first is that they don't have it, so you're asking the wrong person for the wrong information, or you haven't asked them for it in a way that makes them want to give it to you. In other words, actually, this is exactly what I'm demonstrating here. So you might find this example instructive. That's exactly right, Ducci. Yes, you are correct. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. We query the knowledge base. If I don't have an answer, I say, sorry, I don't have an answer. And then if I do have an answer, let's see what I do. So let's say this condition doesn't fire. I was able to find an answer. So we continue on. And I'll say something like, sure, I can go ahead and answer that for you. And here, and this is Elgatus, where I think you might find this example instructive. The thing that I want to collect is the user's email. So first I'll go ahead and say, but before I answer your question, can I have your email? So here, let's remind ourselves what we've done. We've confirmed that we have an answer for our user, but before we give them the answer, we want to go ahead and collect their email address. So now they get an answer to their question, I get their email, everybody is happy, so on and so forth. Can you give me the exact page of the docs where event.integration instruction is described? I don't actually know the particular page that you're looking for, but there is a search function on the documentation, Royo Tech. Were you able to use the search function on the documentation? All right, let us continue. Okay, so let's test out a conversation here, because it's been a couple of turns that we haven't, or a couple of additions to this bot, and we haven't actually tested this out yet. So I'll go ahead and say hi. And we see here, you can go ahead and ask me anything. I'm going to say, what color is the tiger? And what I'm expecting to happen is I'm expecting to receive the messages that say, sure, I can answer that. But first, I need your email. And there we go. So we say, sure, I can go ahead and answer that for you. But before I answer your question, can I have your email? And I'll say soup@gmail.com. And then that's the end of the conversation, because we haven't answered the question yet. So here, a couple of things. I'll go ahead and send the answer. I'll go ahead and make sure that I actually give the response. So that's workflow.queryKTheAnswer. Remember, that's the variable that we save the answer to. And then we want to save that email. The whole point of this exercise was to save that email to a table. Let's go ahead and do that. So before we send this answer, I want to do an execution. I want to execute a custom piece of code, but I don't want to write any code, so I'll just use the insert record card. If you've been watching the Botpress YouTube channel for a while, you'll know this is my favorite card because it takes information that your bot is collecting and then it stores it to a table. So it takes the information and it inserts a record, creates a row in a certain spreadsheet in the emails table. Let me show you how this works. When you click into the insert record card, you're prompted to select a table. That'll be emails table. And then it's going to show you all of the columns that you have. And of course, we only have the one column. And so we want to see what information we're going to store here. Well, the information that I want to store in the email column is the email that our user gives us. In other words, I want to take this email address and I want to store it here. So before I do that, I want to save the email that the user gives us to a variable called user email, which I will then just pop here. And there we go, easy as pie. So let's try this one more time. I'll say, what color is the tiger? And I'll say stu@gmail.com is my email. We get the answer, and ipso facto, we're done. Let me pop over to our table to make sure this has finished. And we see here the email is saved correctly. Now, of course, this is a dead simple example where we're just collecting the user's email, but maybe we want to collect something else, like how much do they want to spend on Botpress, or what is their favorite color? Really, the sky is limitless, but the idea here is you're collecting information and you're saving it to a table based on something. Let me just type a response to pass USIA because I see that your signal is terrible. So I'm going to go ahead and say we typically post the recordings on YouTube. Stay tuned for those. Let us hope that OBS does not fail me now. So can you use cookies to identify a returning user and then have contacts with previous chats? I'm not sure how you would use the cookies because Botpress doesn't store cookies on behalf of a user, but and here, let me show you real intel. When you create a variable, you've got a couple of different scopes: workflow, user, bot. So let's say you wanted to save the user's name and assume they're coming back again later. Well, you could say that to a user variable, and that will persist across different users. So if you've identified a user and they come back, then the user variables will continue to be identified. Of course, equally, in the bot dashboard, if you opt not to clear the conversation on exit, then that conversation will remain. So the user will be able to refer to their conversation history. So you've got a couple of different options there for kind of returning users or persistent users. Workflow variables, in case we're wondering what the heck these are, workflow variables are limited to a specific workflow, and they are limited to the scope of a bot's conversation. Okay, so let's try the negative example where we don't have an answer to this question, just to make sure that this works. What if I say, like, how hot is the soup? We should receive an answer telling us that I don't have an answer. Yeah, sorry, I don't have an answer. And there we go. So I think this is a pretty, I've been yammering a lot, but this is like a 5-10 minute build that you can use to show to a kind of proof of concept if you're a freelancer or an agency, or you're just building a bot for yourself, or maybe you're a small customer success team, or whatever the case may be, and you want to demonstrate, like, I'm putting this on my website for a reason, and I'm using it not just to answer questions, but also to collect some emails. Then we are kind of mixing two things in one. And the idea here is you've taken the bot that you could build either way. You could have built this in a way that just answers questions, but you're now turning this into something that's generating value, potentially leads for your business. And that's what we love to see. We love to see software implementations that can do multiple things for multiple different teams. So now, instead of just alleviating some work on the customer success team, for example, here at Botpress, instead, something that can collect emails, that can collect names, that can gauge audience interest, now has a ton of value equally for a sales team. Or maybe you're collecting feedback and you want to understand from a product perspective, what are things that we need to change, so on and so forth. So a really simple build that demonstrated a couple of different functionalities: the query knowledge base card, as well as the insert record card, which is one that I don't think I've shown on a stream for a while. So I'm happy to show this all off for all of you today. I hope that this answered some of the questions that some of you were having. And if you're watching the recording later, I hope that this cleared something up for you. All right. Well, so that was the lesson that I had prepared for us today. So I'm glad that we made good time on getting through it. We're just coming up to the end of this week's stream. So if anybody has any burning questions or last minute thoughts or things that you want me to address or just talk about or answer questions or maybe show on stream, speak now or forever hold your bot building peace, as I say, and I'll go ahead and answer those questions for you. No problemo. I think maybe as I wait for you to maybe come up with the last of your questions, there's maybe one last thing that I want to demonstrate, and maybe that's if I have more than one column here. What do I want to do? So let's get a bit fancy and let's do first name, last name. Because typically, let's say if you're working in a CRM like HubSpot, these will be two separate properties. So the first name and the last name, typically you would want to store them separately. And I'll show you how to do this. Okay, so I will ask for the user's name. It is important here that we use the person name card. And you'll see here that the type of the value, the variable here is a unique type because it's looking for the name. And I'll say, can I also have your name? We'll save this to a variable called username. And our insert record card now has two new things. It has first name, last name. What the heck? That's crazy. So here we'll do workflow.username.first and workflow.username.last. And I'll go through each of these in a sec. Let me just show you. So we get to that point in the conversation again. lasagna@gmail.com is my email. And maybe my first name, last name is Tim McGraw. I've been thinking about Taylor Swift today. Okay, so let's see a couple of things. You'll notice that in the insert record card, I placed, what the heck is this? Workflow.username.first. Well, you'll see here the username variable has two keys, first and last. So you can reference these separately if you like, or export them to a CRM tool like HubSpot, which expects to receive first and last. And then here we have first name, last name, which are saved separately, despite the fact that our user just gave us one name. What's a cool feature in Botpress that you think is underrated or not used enough? Ooh, that's a great question. I love this question. 100% it's tables. I know how many rows are created each day, and I'm watching all of you, and I guarantee that there are people out there that should be using tables that aren't. And I know that it's a feature that can and is providing a lot of value for people. It is by far my favorite feature in Botpress. There's a ton of great features in Botpress, but tables are 100% one of the most useful things. Earlier we had a question about doing stuff like surveys and evaluations, and I've got a video on the Botpress YouTube channel about doing user surveys or doing user research or asking for feedback surveys. And of course, all of that is great, but you need to store that information somewhere, and that information can be stored in a Botpress table. You can export it to a CSV, you can perform data analysis on it. It is just by far the thing that takes your bot from, like, any bot platform can build a bot. Like, you can build a bot. It's like 100 different bot platforms. But the thing that I think sets Botpress apart from the rest is the way that we integrate with tables. It makes me happy to use. It's a software feature that I like. For instance, if you watch on the Botpress YouTube channel, one of the things that I've demonstrated on a stream before is I used a Botpress bot to plan the office holiday party here at Botpress, and I used tables for that. I didn't have to use a Google Sheet. I didn't have to use a type form. I didn't have to use a survey. I just did everything completely in Botpress. So that's like a challenge that I do for myself. It's like, can I do this task in Botpress, and how would I do it? And time again, I rely on tables to do those. Thanks for the great question. I really appreciate that question. Maybe if you ask me again next week, I might have a different answer, but probably not. All right, I think that is going to be it for this week's live stream. Thank you so much for all your questions. They've been really great. If you're watching the recording this later on, join us on Discord sometime. It's great. We have a great time. We answer questions live. It's really lovely. I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day or evening or morning or Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on what time it is for you in the world where you are. And I will catch you all next week. Same time, same place, Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye, everyone. Happy bot building.